Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Planet Therapy. Remember, this is a space where we have casual conversations surrounding self love, work life balance, and also belonging. Today, I thought it would be great to talk about something where it's a bit close to me, and I feel like it's something that we all can sort of learn from. And I think in my journey of, let's say, I like to call myself someone that's like a retired people pleaser because I feel like I just used to always feel comfortable, always push to kind of make other people feel comfortable around my space. But then it wasn't until like, let's say recent years that I realized like, oh, like I'm actually pushing aside my own feelings here to kind of make other people feel better. And I feel like I just made myself feel small. And then when it came to making big decisions or stuff like that, that I feel like would ultimately make other people feel uncomfortable, but I knew better me, it's like I'm at that point now. I'm like, okay, I have to choose chaos. I have to choosing myself to make sure that I get what I need to do. So I guess the theme of this episode is actually learning how to develop self-trust. And that in particular when pressure's involved. And I think why that's important is because when you kind of sit down and you think to yourself, okay, I need to get X, Y, or this project done, or I just need to get things done. You kind of have to reach a stage where you sit with yourself and like, okay, can I actually do it? And that's where that crossover line is. And it's like, okay, cool. How do we get across that line? Before we get into all of this, I'm sure that we've all heard the expression pressure builds diamonds. And as pretty as a picture as that sounds, because sometimes, me included, sometimes I need a little bit of pressure, especially when I was in uni trying to get deadlines done, or when I was working in sales trying to get some of these targets done. That pressure sometimes kind of builds that kind of drive to like, okay, cool, I've got a target, I've got a deadline, let's go. But sometimes you kind of realize that that pressure that sometimes we even just place onto ourselves can actually do the opposite. And it kind of makes us reach to a point where it's like we're under so much pressure and we're trying to dig, and it's almost become so much intense that we begin to blur the lines of self-love and trying to get something done. And that's where it becomes where pressure is actually too intense. And sometimes that pressure builds diamonds as an excuse of us compromising our trust in ourselves. And I guess where that also comes into is the fact that seasons in our lives are not always they don't always need to be intense. Think about a goal that you have in mind that you want to accomplish. And sometimes we might actually sit down and think, we're not actually where we want to be right now. And we then apply so much pressure to kind of reach those goals because we haven't met them, etc., etc. But sometimes that's not the season for you to be intense. Sometimes you're meant to be soft to yourself or kind to yourself and like, okay, great. I know I'm not where I want to be right now, but I can make small steps, small movements to kind of get to where I need to be. And I think when you have that approach, it kind of removes that idea of, let's say we need to meet goals by X amount of time. Listen, goals are always important, but it's also, it needs to kind of work in between our own self-identity in a way. It's like, okay, we have these goals because we might want to identify as a person that gets things done, or we want to identify as someone that's quite organized and stuff like that. So goals are quite important, yes, but I feel like we need to kind of learn how to build systems in our head where it's like, okay, great, I can do small steps to kind of approach a certain goal in our minds to kind of become that sort of person or achieve that certain thing that we put ourselves out to achieve. And that way it kind of alleviates that sort of pressure. But you might be in a season where it's like, I need to kind of just unwind. I need to let go of what's going on right now for me to then be able to kind of build on something, because you can't build on an unstable foundation. So when it comes to pressure, it's kind of analyzing that sometimes when pressure forms, it kind of exposes those areas of ourselves that we don't actually want to explore, or areas of ourselves that we haven't healed, or areas that we don't actually trust ourselves in. Why I say that is because some people confuse self-trust with confidence. Sometimes you can be confident in knowing that you can actually achieve something, and that's perfectly fine. But sometimes you also might have a setback. And if you don't have a foundation where you have been building to kind of be like, okay, I can still show up where I need to be, then that confidence will just shatter and you're kind of just left with, okay, so what do I do now? So when you think of self-trust, think of it as knowing that when things aren't going your way, you're still able to show up for yourself in knowing that, okay, regardless of the situation that I am in, I'm still fine and I'm still going to get to where I need to be. The thing about pressure is it exposes the things we actually don't have. So if you realize that sometimes you're in a high pressure situation, sometimes some people might overcompensate for their time. They might actually not realize that they are giving away 80% of their time when they're meant to give away 40 to get something done, because they don't trust themselves and able to actually be able to organize and set up certain timescales to make sure that it works within their capacity. Sometimes people overcommit. So they kind of pile on more tasks to do, or keep saying yes in the times when they're meant to say no. And then they kind of confuse that, because if they feel like they need to add on more tasks, as if they make themselves look more valuable to, let's say, their managers or to family members or friends, when in reality, they needed to actually just slow down and say no. They need to trust that gut that's inside of them to know that, okay, I am only able to commit to this bandwidth. Because when you kind of get to that point, you trust yourself to know that, okay, I can do 4 things right now to its full capacity. And then if you add on more, like let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 things onto that pile, then you start to realize that all your other tasks that you feel like you could have done to your full capacity start to diminish. And it's like, oh, if I just slow down, I would have been able to kind of get at least more things done to the best of my capacity, rather than trying to pile on and it all kind of just crumbles like Jenga bricks, if that makes sense. Now we understand that pressure can expose that cracks within us, and it kind of shows different sides of ourselves that we actually don't actually enjoy. So how can we then try to build that sort of self-trust to make sure that when things, which 9 times out of 10 they always do, don't go the way that we want it to be, how can we prop ourselves up to make sure that, you know what, we're okay, and build on that self-trust? And I thought if you think of it as layers of an onion, the first layer is learning to be honest. Honest in knowing that when you're overwhelmed, you need to be able to acknowledge that and be like, hey, there is too much going on right now and I need to just pause. Because how on earth can you build self-trust if you're not even honest with the fact that you are struggling? Or if you don't understand something, be honest with yourself. Okay, I don't get this. A manager might give you a task, or you might trying to build a business, or you're trying to create more content and stuff like that. But there's something you actually just don't understand. And you need to sit there and be like, okay, and that's fine. Honesty is also about knowing your limits. And it's knowing what you can actually commit to and what you can't commit to, and also being okay with that. Because think of it, actually, you know what? Think of it like this. You can't trust a version of yourself that you're lying to. So if you know that you're lying to yourself at certain points because you can feel it deep in your bones, that you're in denial and you can't do it, you need to be able to actually speak up and actually acknowledge that for yourself. The next layer of the onion is actually looking at the evidence. Sometimes we can really delude ourselves into thinking that we can't do something, or, you know, we're incapable of XYZ, when we haven't actually taken the time to stop and actually be like, oh, but for the last couple of months, I might not have been where I want to be at this point, but I've actually been showing up for myself. I've been going to the gym maybe once or twice a week. I've been eating healthily, drinking as much water. I've been actually managing to show up to work and do my task efficiently. And it might not be the goal in mind that you have in your head, but the evidence is telling you that you're actually able to survive in these rough patches of seasons. You might not have a job at the moment, but you can sit down with yourself and be like, oh, but I've been applying for jobs. I've been trying to keep myself motivated, and I've literally just been getting out of my bed and actually just be like, you know what, I want better for myself. Those small steps are actually just ways of you providing evidence that, you know what, I can do this and I'm doing it, and that's okay. So the next step is when you actually acknowledge that, it's like slowly adding more to your capacity to know that, okay, when you got that mindset of you're honest with yourself and you can see that you're actually being able to do it, it's those small things. It's like, oh, okay, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Do you get what I mean? And I think the final stage of that layer is actually identity. Now, when I say this, it's like if we go from the beginning, you're honest with yourself and you can consistently see the evidence of what you're able to do and your capacity and what you're made of. Then when you look at the identity, then it's actually knowing that, oh, I can become this person. And you start moving like you are that person. If you want to be someone that is quite intelligent and you can see that you've taken a course or you've done something like that, then it's like moving and knowing that, okay, I'm actually able to become, let's say for me, a data analyst. So what I want to do is then I start moving like one. I approach my tasks in a way that I start to organize it. I start really be like, okay, what does this data set mean? How can I improve XYZ within my business or the company I work for? And when you start to have yourself as an image, it's like, I am this person that is an artist. So I can write. I could do poetry. I can draw. It's like, okay, when you start living in that and you start seeing that you have been practicing in those walks, you've been practicing in those steps, then your brain will actually start to catch up with itself in knowing that, oh, okay, you don't even realize that you are moving as someone that is an artist or that is a writer or that is a businessman or that is a salesperson, because you actually live who you told yourself you want to be. And it might not be, let's say, where you're at right now in terms of like that goalpost might look far away to you, but you're building that confidence and you're building that self-trust as you're building those systems in knowing that we are slowly getting to be that sort of person that we told ourselves we're going to be. And we might have those goals and it might build, let's say, small bouts of pressure. But sometimes pressure isn't meant to be a high intensive drug. It's actually meant to be something to help shape and guide you to where you're meant to be. I feel like even a way to even sum up how we've even been speaking about pressure and self-trust is actually looking at this loop. Because when you really think about it, pressure triggers doubt. Because you kind of start to doubt yourself when you're in high pressure environments because you feel like, can I actually do this? Am I able to ring up this amount of people to make sure that I get my target? Am I able to even write this script at this certain amount of time because I don't know if I got the creative capacity for it? And when you have that self-doubt, you notice it might actually start to shake that identity that you start to build for yourself. Because when you're like, oh, okay, am I actually an artist? Am I actually a writer? Am I actually this person that I said I'm going to achieve and set out these goals? But the thing about identity is it needs safety. It needs to know that, okay, in the midst of when I'm doubting myself, I can actually have a safety net in knowing that, oh, no, this is just what comes with the job. This is what comes with being an artist. I might have creative blockages and stuff like that. And I just need to find a way to kind of get myself back on track to make sure that, okay, we can be this and we can get something out. Or if I want to be a salesperson, I want to be a tech person and I don't understand these terminologies, or I'm just in a downward spiral at the moment, it's not the be all the end all. So we need to kind of learn to kind of build safety within ourselves to make sure that, okay, when things rattle us, we can still put ourselves back on track. And when you then do find safety, you also then find self-trust because you realize like, oh, okay, even when Mother Nature wants to swing at my head, I can still get up because I know I'm okay and I know I have the capabilities to get myself back on track. I am good. I'm confident in my abilities that I can shift, I can pivot to make sure that I still reach the targets and goals that I set myself. And when you have that self-trust, you'll notice it kind of reduces that pressure because it's knowing that regardless of what's happening, I don't need to shut down. I don't need to overcompensate my time. I don't need to keep agreeing to people when I know I can't do things. And when you have that reduced pressure, you then have better results because you realize like, oh, okay, because I don't need to kind of put myself out there too much and overextend myself, because I can then have systems in my head to know that, okay, when things are too much and I'm honest with myself, I can take a step back and have that cup full for other possibilities of things that you need to set yourself out for, if that makes sense. And I think with this, it's kind of like, ask yourself, when have you surprised yourself that you have faced hard challenges and you've overcame that? For me, it was even like this podcast or setting up this business. There's been so many times I wanted to scream and I wanted to run away. I told my friends that I just want to disappear on a remote island and have nobody contact me because I can't do it. And I think the challenges that I faced, especially even now, it's like sometimes just working with limited resources when it comes to financial resources or not having a camera or just whatever and stuff like that. I've had to learn how to navigate so many situations that I didn't know I could, and pivot when things weren't going my way. And I think from that, I learned how to, underneath those hard times of pressure, I learned that, oh my God, I can actually still be okay. And I can turn something that I had an original idea to and pivot into something else so that actually becomes even better. And it's just knowing that I am a creative person and trusting that I am organized. I am someone that is quite ambitious, and using those sorts of forms of pressure to kind of take myself away and be honest when I'm overwhelmed, to then, when I have that setting, it's like, okay, I'm calm. I can reimagine a different image in my head and kind of take back control and create something completely different. And those are the cycle and loops that I face on a daily. So ask yourself, what have you survived within your seasons of life? And what have you learned from that in knowing that you can actually overcome that? Now, that wraps up the end of this episode. And I want you guys to believe that you are someone that you can trust. You are someone that isn't perfect, but you can be consistent. And if you have that consistency and knowing that you can be honest with yourself and you learn to develop that self-trust and self-love, then honestly, you can achieve a lot of things in just knowing that. And you'll start to become a lot more comfortable with knowing yourself. And when you know yourself well, you can actually start to accommodate things to your likeness and not other people. And you learn to not kind of follow the crowd. And it's amazing when you kind of start to live like that. And that's something that I'm literally constantly practicing up till today. So as I'm doing that, I'm sure you guys on that journey will also be able to reach that pivot as well and just become the type of people that you want to be. Now, remember to find us on our website, My Planet Essentials. I'm literally wearing one of the jumpers now. You can also find us on socials, My Planet Essentials _ on Instagram and TikTok and Pinterest. And yeah, I hope you take care and you stay blessed. Peace.